Chapter 4 Echoes Beneath the Ash, The Hunger That Watches. The stone beneath Amuro's boots had changed. Gone were the cracked, rune-etched floors of the upper halls. Now, the dungeon floor bore trails, no, scars, carved not by tools, but by movement. Claw drags. Deep grooves. As if something massive had crawled here, again and again, searching. He crouched beside one of the grooves. A faint shimmer pulsed from it, residual energy. Echo burn. Something had died here. Many things, probably. Compass objective updated. Seek shelter and recover. Warning, status. Fatigued, injured, hunger rising. Amuro's breath misted before him, though there was no cold. The air was still. Too still. He moved forward, following the grooves, until the corridor opened into a chamber. Not large, but dense with forgotten life. An abandoned camp. Broken crates. A half-collapsed tent. Rusted cookware. And bones. He approached carefully, blade in hand, watching for traps. Nothing moved. A cooking pot still sat atop a blackened circle of stones, long gone cold. Inside the pot, dried residue of some stew made ages ago. Next to it, sealed leather satchels. Food. He opened one and sniffed. Dusty but edible. A few dried fungal slabs, likely harvested from the bioluminescent shelves deeper down. He sat, finally, and ate. The food was bitter and dense, but it calmed the gnawing in his gut. Bowl with spoon hunger. Stabilized. Then came the pain. It wasn't his injuries, it was deeper. Memory deep. A headache surged behind his eyes. His runes flickered, and a voice, faint as mist, echoed in his mind. Sleep while you can, echo-bound. The deeper threads are waking. He curled against the side of the tent and drifted off. Interlude, a memory of the first fire. He dreamed of a blade. Not the one he carried now, this one was vast, jagged like the jawbone of some titanic beast. It stood embedded in the chest of a fallen giant. Around it, fire bloomed across a battlefield where the sky wept blood. The blade whispered, "We remember your hunger." Awakening and craft. He woke sweating. The fire dream still flickering in his mind. It was time to prepare. He scavenged the area, found 2 small soul caps, a mushroom that feeds on residual magic, a cracked mortar, and flint shards. Using remnants of cloth and bone, he crafted. Makeshift salve, restores minor wounds. Reinforced wrappings, grants minor defense against slashing attacks. Fire starter kit. He laid the salve along his ribs where an earlier goblin blade had cut him. The burn was immediate, but then, relief. Syringe wound treated. Minor healing initiated. He took stock of himself. No one was coming to save him. This world only moved forward. Time to press deeper. Deeper descent, the nest of hunger. The tunnel beyond the camp dipped sharply. Here, the walls were webbed with thick gray tendrils, veins, roots, no, teeth. Tiny rows of them. Closed mouths embedded in the walls. They whispered as he passed, soft hisses in forgotten tongues. Then the stench hit him. Raw meat. Wet fur. Starvation. A new chamber. And at its center, squatting on a throne made of rib cages, was a monstrosity. It breathed slowly, a mass of writhing limbs and open jaws, none of which matched. Some had too many teeth. Some had none at all. Warning mini-boss detected. The hunger that watches. Type. Echo Construct / Predator Spawn. Threat level. Very high. Special traits. Devour Memory. Removes a skill from target temporarily. Mirrored Bite. Reflects damage taken. Echo Howl. Stuns by invoking forgotten fear. The beast did not move at first. It simply watched. Amuro took a breath and stepped forward. It leapt. The fight began with instinct. He blinked backward with shadow ripstep, leaving behind a false image. The creature tore through it. Amuro circled, striking from the side. His revenant blade connected, sparks erupted. But then pain. His arm seized. Memory lock. Shadow ripstep temporarily disabled. It had stolen his move. He cursed and ducked a tendril. He rolled, grabbing a fallen shard of bone. Through it, the beast roared. The cavern walls trembled. Then its body began to shift. Its limbs melted into smoke, reformed as towering legs. It lunged, and Amuro leapt into the smoke, slicing upward. The blade screeched as it passed through the monster's core. It screamed. Fire synergy triggered. Echo feedback reflux. Visions surged again. A starving child. A prison without light. Endless gnawing. The parasite had once been a man. No. A prisoner. Fed to the thread. He plunged the blade in again, this time into its eye, and the room erupted in a shockwave of sound. Skull and Crossbones, mini-boss defeated. The hunger that watches. Aftermath and echo smithing. Amuro staggered. Ash spiraled upward from the beast's remains, then compressed into a single pulsing item. Dagger. Relic gained. Ashen Fong. A living dagger formed from devoured echoes. Grows stronger when fed lost memories. Can siphon knowledge from slain echo beasts. Attunes to users' nightmares. Warning. High mental strain. He held it. It pulsed in his palm, eager. Brain new skill gained. Echo Forge. Allows creation or evolution of gear using extracted memories from enemies. Cost. Mental stability plus soul fragments. He sat back at the edge of the chamber, exhaling. Crafted a memory brew, crushed soul cap, thread root, and a drop of his own blood. The effect, clarity of thought, reduced echo interference. He drank. It burned. Test tube focus restored. Then, sleep. Not from exhaustion, but necessity. The deeper he went, the more the dungeon remembered him. Final scene. The Watcher. He dreamed again. But this time, he wasn't alone. A figure sat beside the fire in the memory camp. Cloaked. Face obscured. Yet their voice rang like bells in a storm. You've taken the first soul. Soon you'll take many more. Do you know why the dungeon wants you alive, Amuro? He tried to speak. Couldn't. Because you're unfinished. A question it wants to answer. The figure vanished. Only their shadow remained, burned into the stone. Amuro woke to the scent of fire. His camp was gone. In its place, stairs leading downward, carved just hours ago, still warm. Compass main path unlocked. Descent to Tier 3, the Forgotten Loom. The rune in his hand glowed like a brand. And far below, something laughed. Cathedral of Silent Voices, Part 2. Amuro awoke with a jolt, the last echoes of the parasite's destruction still resonating in his mind. The ground beneath him was cold and damp, the air thick with the scent of decay. He could still hear the remnants of the shattered black substance, a haunting reverberation that clung to his thoughts. The sharp pain in his head made everything feel distant, but he knew that stopping was not an option. He rose with difficulty, leaning against a twisted root that had sprouted from the stone floor. His hands were covered in a dark, tar-like residue, the remnants of the parasite's death. Slowly, his eyes scanned the surroundings, the pulsing energy of his rune still thrumming in his body. The air was charged, as if the very world around him had shifted with the destruction of the parasite. Echo Siphon, the new ability hummed within him, but was he truly prepared for what was to come? With each passing moment, he could feel the transformation within himself, a strange fusion of power and a growing unease. What had once been a part of him now seemed more like a stranger, something he couldn't control, something more dangerous than ever before. He moved forward cautiously, his boots echoing faintly as he stepped across the cracked stone floor. The cathedral-like space loomed around him, its structure twisted and alien, as if the very architecture was alive, shifting with the pulse of the dungeon itself. His steps took him deeper into the heart of the cathedral, and he could feel the oppressive weight of something ancient, something watching. Amuro's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his revenant blade, the weapon still thrumming with an energy all its own. The memory of the parasite's assault lingered, and the blade felt almost eager, as if it too was hungry for more. But the overwhelming darkness of the cathedral made him pause. What lay ahead? The vision of the creature's shattered body still lingered in his mind. Yet, something told him this place was not finished with him yet. There was more to this puzzle, more layers beneath the surface that he had yet to uncover. He continued walking. A sudden gust of wind whispered through the air, carrying with it the faint scent of metal and burning wood. Amuro stiffened. A voice. Not one spoken aloud, but inside his mind, as it had been before. Fragmented, ancient, cryptic. Thread awaits. He stopped in his tracks, sweat beginning to bead on his brow. Was it the same voice? Had the echo parasite left something behind within him? The answer came quickly. You seek purpose, but it is not for you to choose. His rune flared brightly, the symbol pulsing beneath his skin, as if reacting to the voice's command. For a brief moment, the floor beneath him trembled, and a low hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the walls and up into his bones. He staggered, his hand instinctively reaching for the wall to steady himself. But there was no time to recover. Before him, a figure stepped into view from the shadows, a tall, gaunt shape, cloaked in darkness. It moved like smoke, its form shifting with every step. The air around it seemed to warp, and with each movement, the temperature dropped, as if the very presence of this entity could freeze time itself. The figure's eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, fixed on Amuro. You are not alone, the voice said, 1,000 voices speaking at once. But you will be, soon. Amuro's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of those words in his chest, as if they were carving something deep into his soul. What do you want from me? He demanded, his grip tightening on the revenant blade. His heart pounded in his ears, and the runes on his body flared as he called upon his power. The figure stepped closer, its form becoming more solid with every passing second. You will find that your path is not one of your choosing. There are things that are far greater than you, and they will call you when the time is right. The figure raised a hand, and Amuro felt a chill run down his spine. The air grew heavier, the shadows around them deepening. You must prepare, the figure continued, for what lies beneath. Amuro stepped back, his mind racing. What did it mean? What was lying beneath? The sense of dread gnawed at his insides, but he pushed it down, focusing instead on the task at hand. The figure turned, its form flickering out of existence as quickly as it had appeared. The cathedral was silent once more. Amuro's mind was ablaze with questions, but one thing was clear, his journey was only beginning. The threads were pulling him deeper, guiding him toward something he could not yet understand. But as the figure had said, there were things greater than him, and they were coming for him. Taking a deep breath, Amuro steadied himself. He would have to learn quickly, adapt to the growing power within him, and confront whatever came next. The dungeon was alive. And it had a story to tell. Cathedral of Silent Voices, Part 3. Amuro stood motionless, his eyes scanning the now empty space where the figure had once been. The air was still, the weight of the silence pressing against his chest. His hand gripped the hilt of his revenant blade tighter, knuckles white as his thoughts spiraled. He could feel it, something lurking at the edges of his consciousness. The shadows seemed to twitch in the corners of his vision, as though they were alive, aware of his every movement. His breath quickened, his senses heightening as the darkness of the cathedral seemed to grow thicker. He turned on his heel, deciding to move deeper into the structure. The pulsating glow of his rune on his hand was the only source of light. He had no real understanding of what the figure meant by what lies beneath, but the presence of danger was undeniable. He had felt it in his bones, a presence that was both old and familiar, as if the dungeon itself was breathing down his neck. As he ventured further, he came to a passageway that led down a narrow staircase. The stone beneath his boots was slick, the walls jagged and uneven. His every step echoed through the cavernous chamber, the sound amplifying in the oppressive air. Amuro stopped at the top of the stairs, feeling the faintest ripple in the air around him. It was like a shift in the currents, a change in the very atmosphere that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but he had no choice now. There was something at the end of this path, something that was waiting for him. He began to descend. The further he went, the darker it became, until his rune was the only thing guiding him. The steps seemed to stretch endlessly, the faint echo of his own movements filling the void. There was no sound of life, no whispers of distant creatures. Only the grinding noise of stone beneath his feet and the oppressive silence that clung to every surface. As he reached the bottom, the passage opened into a vast, circular chamber. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting twisted, grotesque figures. Faces contorted in agony, hands reaching out from the stone as if they were trying to escape. The floor was a mix of shattered stone and blackened tiles, remnants of a long-forgotten time. And in the center, a massive altar. It was a thing of horror and beauty. Made from the same black stone that permeated the dungeon, its surface was adorned with strange runes, similar to those on Amuro's hand. But these were different, deeper, darker, as if they had been carved into the stone by forces far older than anything he could comprehend. On the altar lay a single object, a sword. It glimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light, its blade a swirling mass of shadows and flame. The hilt was ornate, wrapped in what appeared to be tattered remnants of a once grand cloak, and the pommel bore a single deep red gemstone that pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Amuro's heart skipped a beat. The sword, it felt familiar, like something he had seen in a dream. But it wasn't the same as the Revenant blade. This was something else entirely, something more powerful. He stepped closer to the altar, his footsteps slow and deliberate. The air around him seemed to hum, as if the sword itself was aware of his presence. He reached out, hand trembling slightly, and grasped the hilt. As soon as his fingers touched the blade, a shock wave of energy coursed through his body. His eyes widened as his skin burned with the force of it, his muscles screaming in protest. The sword seemed to react to his touch, drawing from his very soul. The world around him blurred, and for a moment he saw flashes of countless battles, ancient wars, heroes falling, and kingdoms rising and crumbling to dust. Then it all stopped. Amuro fell to his knees, gasping for air. The sword was now in his grasp, the weight of it almost too much to bear. The runes on his hand flared brightly, merging with the energy of the blade, and for a brief moment he saw a vision of a figure, one that looked like him, but different. A version of himself, older, more battle-worn, standing in the middle of a field of bodies, holding this very sword. He blinked, and the vision vanished. "What is this?" he muttered, barely able to comprehend what he had just seen. The sword pulsed in his hand, and he felt something stir deep within him. Something ancient. Something powerful. A voice, soft and distant, whispered in his mind. "Chosen." Amuro's heart raced. Chosen? For what? But the voice did not answer. Instead, the sword pulsed again, and the ground beneath him shook. The chamber began to tremble as a deep rumble echoed through the walls. Amuro's vision blurred, his head spinning as the rune on his hand flared brighter than ever before. Something was coming. He struggled to stand, but the weight of the sword and the oppressive air around him threatened to keep him grounded. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the chamber. Amuro turned, his breath catching in his throat. From the shadows emerged a figure, a massive being, cloaked in black armor, with a helmet that seemed to reflect the darkness itself. It was humanoid, but the sheer size of it was overwhelming. Its arms were like tree trunks, its body covered in jagged, dark metal. But it wasn't the armor that made Amuro's blood run cold. It was the eyes. Two glowing, fiery orbs stared at him from beneath the helmet, burning with a malevolent hunger. The creature let out a low growl, its voice distorted and guttural. The sword. It must not awaken. Amuro tightened his grip on the hilt, feeling the power of the blade surge through him. His rune pulsed in synchronization with it, and for a moment he could hear the whispers of thousands of voices, all urging him to fight. The creature advanced, its footsteps slow but deliberate. It reached out, its hand opening as if to crush Amuro where he stood. Amuro's heart raced, but he didn't hesitate. He raised the sword above his head, the blade crackling with dark energy, and with a roar, he charged. The world exploded in a burst of light. Cathedral of Silent Voices, Final Part. The blade in Amuro's hand thrummed with dark energy, its power responding to the impending threat. His pulse quickened as the towering figure advanced, its footsteps causing the ground beneath him to shake. The creature's fiery eyes bore into him with a hunger that felt ancient, primal. Amuro barely had time to react before the beast lunged. Its massive fist came crashing toward him, the force behind it like a storm. Amuro sidestepped, but not quickly enough. The edge of the creature's gauntlet scraped his shoulder, and a searing pain shot through his body. He gritted his teeth, but the wound was already healing, his runes working overtime to mend the damage. The pain, however, was enough to ground him for a moment. The creature growled, raising its other hand to strike again. With a roar, Amuro swung the revenant blade, the dark energy of the sword crackling through the air. His strike met the creature's arm, and for a moment, he thought the blade would shatter upon contact. But instead, the sword seemed to drink in the impact, absorbing the force and amplifying it. The creature's armor sizzled where the blade made contact, and it staggered back. Amuro, his body moving instinctively, pressed the advantage. He spun, the sword trailing a streak of dark fire as he aimed for the creature's chest. But the figure was faster than he expected. It blocked the strike with a swing of its gauntlet, knocking Amuro off balance. The ground beneath him buckled as the creature's heavy form came crashing down toward him. Amuro rolled away, narrowly avoiding the full brunt of the attack. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, but he was already on his feet again, his breath ragged and his muscles burning with fatigue. He needed something more. The sword alone wouldn't be enough. The creature took another step forward, its fiery eyes narrowing. It seemed to know what Amuro was thinking. "You cannot defeat me," it boomed in a voice that rattled the very stones around them. Not with that. Amuro's grip tightened around the hilt of the blade. He had no choice. He had to trust what he had learned in his brief time in this dungeon. The runes, the abilities, the strange skills he had acquired, they were more than just tools. They were part of him now. He could feel it, deep within his bones. The revenant blade pulsed with energy once more, the dark fire that surrounded it growing brighter, fiercer. Amuro's vision blurred as the sword seemed to merge with the rune on his hand, the two forces synchronizing. Then he did something he hadn't dared to attempt before. Amuro focused on the skill he had acquired from the parasite, Echo Siphon. It was a high-risk maneuver, one that drained memories and life essence from entities tied to the echoes of the dungeon. But in his gut, Amuro knew that this was the moment to use it. He raised the sword high, summoning the dark energies around him. The creature paused, its eyes narrowing in suspicion. With a cry, Amuro thrust the blade forward. The sword tore through the air with a sound like 1,000 screams. As it pierced the creature's chest, a surge of black energy erupted from the blade. Amuro felt it, felt the essence of the beast drain from it, the memories, the hunger, the pain, all funneled into the blade. The creature roared, its body writhing, and for a moment, it seemed as if it would break free. But Amuro held on. The sword hummed with power as the echo siphon tore into the beast's core, draining its very being. The fiery light in its eyes dimmed, flickering like a candle caught in a storm. And then, with a final deafening screech, the creature exploded in a burst of shadow and flame. Amuro staggered back, the force of the explosion sending him crashing to the ground. The revenant blade, now darkened and smoking, felt strangely lighter in his grip. He gasped for breath, his body trembling from the strain. But there was no time to rest. He could feel it. The dungeon was waking. The air grew thicker, heavier. The floor trembled beneath his feet, and the stone walls groaned in protest. Something deeper, something far older, was stirring within the dungeon. The energy from the creature's death had rippled through the entire structure, and now, whatever lay beneath the cathedral was aware of him. Amuro's rune pulsed again, the familiar glow lighting up his hand. "Is this the end?" he whispered to himself, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew the answer. No. This was only the beginning. He forced himself to his feet, the weight of the sword dragging him down. The echoes of the battle still rang in his ears, and his body screamed for rest. But there was no rest here. The cathedral's silence was no longer empty. It was waiting, watching. Amuro turned, his resolve hardening. He had chosen this path. There was no going back now. With the revenant blade in hand, he walked toward the looming darkness, the flickering lights of the runes guiding his way. The zero echo had awakened, and it was only a matter of time before it claimed him.